Hi guys, this one is from the archives. I had kind of almost forgotten I'd filmed this. I did talk about it on Instagram at the time. I had my smear, I had my coil removed, I had it refitted. There were problems. I found out I was HPV positive, or positive HPV test, however you want to put it. It was a whole journey, and this started back in February and it ended just before lockdown. And I really didn't want to put this out until it was relevant again, because obviously no one was going in for that kind of treatment in all of that time. And we're kind of winding up to a regular life again in terms of healthcare and treatments and things. So prepare yourselves, because it's going to be a long one. It's mostly me updating you from my car, if not completely all me updating you from my car. I'm going to take you through a lot of emotions. There will be some tears and some quite graphic explanations of what it is that they're going to do. But I'm going to have my smear, I'm going to have some complications with my coil, and I'm going to have another coil put in. So if any of those things are of interest to you, keep watching. Hi guys, I thought I would do a little diary of my coil and my smear. So basically I have a coil, a contraceptive coil, the MIRENA coil. It's been 5 years. It's also been 5 years since my smear. And so I'm going to have both done, hopefully at the same time. Apparently family planning didn't get the contract for smears this time around. And so you've got to go to your GP, which sucks, because I always tell people to go to family planning because they are the experts. This is what they do day in and day out. And it's always where I feel more comfortable having any kind of like pelvic exam. Anyway, so I'm hoping, they did tell me on the phone that if it is opportunistic, then they will do a smear at the same time, as in it's overdue, which it pretty much is. It's around the same time and they're already getting in there. So I'm hoping that they will do it either now or when they switch out my coil. But today I'm going in for a consultation, which is basically where they'll tell me what's going to happen. They will talk about like what the coil is, etc., which obviously I already know because I have it. And they will do swabs, which is basically again a pelvic exam. So you have the whole speculum thing situation going in. They do swabs and they make sure that there's no infection, and then in 10 days time they will let me know everything's cool, and they can then go in and swap out my coil. So I'm going to go in. I'm a little bit nervous. It's been 5 years since I had to have anything like this done, so I'm a little bit nervous. I know it's not painful, but it's just, you know, exposed. And it's also probably one of the coldest days of the year. Worst possible time to have a piece of metal inserted into your vagina. Just got out of the clinic. I swear the weather is the worst part of this. Okay, I'm back in the car and I'm going to take you through the process. So I went in, we were talking about the coil, and she gave me kind of different examples of like what I might want and blah, blah, blah. I've decided to have the MIRENA again, which is the same that I've got right now. But she didn't realise at the time that I already had one in, and she was telling me that you could self-swab. So I can't remember what I said in the first clip, but basically the first appointment for your coil is to discuss how it all works, what it is, the potential side effects and all that, and then to take swabs of your cervix to make sure there's no infections, because they don't want to put that infection via the coil into your uterus. And so when I've had it done in the past, you have to have a proper full-on like speculum pelvic exam for that, and they have to do it for you. But now they do it as a self-swab. So you can go into the bathroom with some swabs, they give you some instructions, you come back, those swabs get tested, and it is a completely way less invasive way of doing it. Now, I actually couldn't do that because when she found out that I was swapping it over, she needed to check that the threads from my previous one were still there, and she decided that she could give me a smear at the same time. Thankfully, it is overdue. I thought smears were every 5 years and they're every 3. So major slap on the wrist for me. From me, not from her. She didn't care. She didn't show any judgment whatsoever. That was late for my smear. The smear and the swabs are basically exactly the same thing. It is not painful. In my experience, it is not painful to do that part of it. It's, you know, it's embarrassing. You're getting your vagina out for a stranger, but it's not a painful experience. They put a speculum inside, which is basically like a clear plastic tube. There's some jelly on it, so it makes it go in a little bit easier, and they have to kind of like slightly open it up, and they can get inside to your cervix, and like it's just literally sweeping around a little bit. It's uncomfortable, definitely not painful, but it kind of makes you go like, ugh. It's like a weird sensation. It's just very, very foreign, but 100% not painful. I appreciate that for some people it's worse than others, but I'm just giving you my experience. And that is not a difficult part of this process. And the smear is, if you've ever had to have swabs for anything, it's basically exactly the same thing. So that's what we did today. I've got to wait to make sure that the swabs come back okay, and I've got my appointment to come back for my smear on the 3rd of February, which is the day before my birthday. So that'll be fun. So providing everything's okay, which I'm sure it will be, I'll go back and I will come back to you when we're actually going through that process. They will remove the coil and pop me a new one in. The only thing that I do have in terms of instructions between now and then is no sex for 7 days prior to having it refitted. She said that's not even necessarily something that needs to be done because it is a straight swap and it's not expired, but it's probably like a good thing to do. And definitely if you're having a coil for the first time, no sex 7 days before having it put in. Otherwise, that's the update for now, and I will be back on the dreaded day of the coil. Hi, so, okay, I'm just making sure I put my handbrake on because we're on a slope. So today's the day. I've come back to have my coil fitted. I say that like I'm super excited. I am not. I think I had tummy ache at work today because I was like, I'm nervous. But I've done everything that I can possibly do, which is not a lot, to hopefully make myself more comfortable. I've taken some ibuprofen. I have eaten. I've got a full fat Coke, which I've just taken the ibuprofen with not long ago. And I'm going to go in and I will come back out and let you know how it went. One thing I want to mention that I was not expecting was when I had my swabs done for the coil, which obviously came back fine, and I had my smear done. Now, I don't know if we mentioned in the first part, but basically they now test your sample, your smear effectively, for HPV. And if you don't have HPV, they don't do slides. They don't create a slide. It's not looked at by someone in a lab. It's just effectively another way of doing an HPV test, which for me is a little bit, whatever. We can get into that later. It potentially is more invasive than it needs to be, given that they are just testing you for HPV rather than actually always creating a smear. But it would mean that you'd have to come back, and there's pros and cons. Anyway, so I had a slide made because apparently I have HPV. So I looked into this because when I was at the family planning clinic before, I remember seeing on my, on this thing, like a form that I had to fill out, it said in big letters, if you have HPV, it does not mean that your partner has cheated on you. Which obviously it must be a thing that comes up all the time because it is effectively a sexually transmitted infection. It's not, I think it's just an infection. I don't know. It's something a little bit like herpes, where you can have the virus forever and you kind of bat it back and forth between you. You can never have any kind of symptoms. You may never know that you've got it. I definitely didn't have any symptoms at all. Presumably, if I've got it, Lee probably has it as well. He didn't have any symptoms. And previously, I would never have known that I had HPV because it's not something that they were testing for. They were just doing the regular smear. So worth mentioning, and it is something I'm going to ask about when I go in now. So I may have more information on that when I come back out. I am aware that now I need to go for annual smears because they need to make sure that eventually it's kind of out of my system. This is the thing I want to know about because I think it's always in your system, but you can clear it up. I don't know. I have so many questions. So I'm going to ask those. I'm going to have the coil taken out and put back in, and I will be back very soon. I'm having a bit of a moment, to be honest. I don't entirely know why. So I went in. It didn't go well. I went in and we went through all of the process, you know, all of talking, whatever. I asked the HPV questions, by the way, and it was as I suspected. It's like a virus that can live. I still don't understand what active versus dormant means, because it can kind of be in your system forever or it can clear up. I don't get it. But either way, it's not really something you should worry about, but it's something that can potentially make you more susceptible to cervical cancer, which is why they keep an eye on it, but potentially it will be nothing. Anyway, so I went in, we did the whole kind of like pelvic exam thing, which definitely felt more thorough than the last one when I went, and she was kind of feeling around for the string and she couldn't find it, which is annoying because 2 weeks ago the woman who did my smear and my swabs could find it, so she couldn't find it, and then she was kind of rooting around in my cervix trying to find it, which is not fun. Anyway, she couldn't find it, and so she couldn't take it out, So she can't put another one in, and now I have to go back for a scan. And I feel like I jinxed myself by starting to film this diary, because we're now getting like the breadth of all things that could possibly happen. The only other thing that could happen was I could have had an abnormal smear. But, so we're going for the scan next week. It's like it's been created for content. But I was sat on the bed, and I don't know if it's because I've been kind of like preparing myself for it, or if I was like scared, because I would rather not have someone manually rootering around in my womb looking for something. But I like sat there, I was laying on the thing like, I don't know why, but I'm having a moment. This is definitely to be continued, because there's nothing else to share, but from that they couldn't find the coil, and I'm going back next week. I'm back. I'm going for the scan. I've realised in the past week that I have no idea what kind of scan this is. I don't know if it's an internal or an external scan. I think it's external. I'm not 100% sure what happens if you find it, if you don't find it, but I'm just letting you know, I'm going in for the scan. I'm a little bit nervous, but I haven't done a lot of Googling. I've not kind of allowed myself to fall down the path of like, what's gonna happen? I know I look flustered. It's not from the exam. It's because it's really, really windy outside. I'm filming this, I think the 11th, 12th of Feb. And it's the full-on storm Kiara, I'm not sure. We've had all kinds of weather. So anyway, I had an internal scan. I feel like at every turn it's been just, if something could have been like better, it's not. But that's, all part of it, isn't it? And it actually was considerably more comfortable to have the internal scan than it was to have the other exams, because there's no speculum. It's basically a dildo with a camera thing on the end. I basically saw it on the screen. It was like the weirdest looking baby in the world. It was there exactly as it should be. Chances are the threads had just kind of got coiled up inside. So basically the next step will be, she has written a letter off to the hospital, to the gynecological department, and or gynecology department, I don't know, and they will call me in for an appointment. And at that appointment I will have my cervix anaesthetised. This is the part that I was most interested in. She was very quick to tell me that this particular, I think she's a nurse, I don't want to dismiss any qualifications she has, but I believe it was a nurse that I saw today. She was very, very helpful. We talked a lot about HPV, and she just was like full of information. And immediately she told me like what the next steps would be before we even did the scan. So that was great. And she said that I will get this letter, we'll go to the hospital, they will anaesthetise my cervix, and then they will go inside with like this very, very thin instrument, and they will try and grab the coil itself, not the strings. And so that is the next step. I'm going to wait for the letter. Just a little note on the HPV. She told me there are two different kinds of the virus. One is the regular kind of, if you Google HPV, it's pretty horrifying. It's all about genital warts and like an active strain of an STD, which is pretty scary. And that's not what I've experienced. I'm completely asymptomatic, nothing at all made me think that I had anything. And so when I looked it up, I was like, I don't understand. And everyone I've spoken to and asked about so far didn't really give me this information. So she said there's two different strains. One is the one that is like an active thing that can cause genital warts that needs to be treated. The other one changes the cells, but both can clear up, but can clear up over time. Now, it seems to be a bit of a what came first, the chicken or the egg, because we don't know. You have to have had sex to get HPV, but it's a bit like anything else like that. Like, where did it come from? No one's born with it. I thought you could be born with it. And I'm sure I've read something that, like, if you have HPV and you have a baby while the HPV is active, the baby can be born with it. I don't know. But it doesn't sound like something that's in your system all the time, which is something someone else did tell me. So it's very confusing and lots of conflicting information. But the long and the short of it is two different types. One needs to be treated, one doesn't. One is something that could potentially cause cervical cancer, and that is kind of what they are looking to make sure kind of gets out of your system, and that's why I'm going back for an annual smear. After that, there's potential of having to have colposcopy, which is like biopsies and things of the cervix, but all of that is down the line, which I'm sure will probably happen, knowing our luck so far, and I will vlog it if it does, you know what I'm saying. But I just wanted to talk about that because that was something that I was really unsure about, and I feel like she gave me lots of information. I'm sure I've not given it to you the same way that she did. But I'm not worried about the HPV. I just was confused about how it can manifest itself in different ways, and it seems like there are 2 different types. Hi guys, so I know it's only been for a second for you, but it's been 5 or 6 weeks for me. I have my hospital appointment, it is today. I thought I'd check in. I'm nervous, very nervous. I think I'm just kind of like disconnecting from it right now. I'm not really thinking too much about it, but I am nervous. I don't really know what is going to happen because my letter is kind of very vague. Covers like all manner of things just in case, I suppose, but I don't know what the room, I think this is the thing that I've got in my mind. I want to visualize what this might look like when I go to the GP or when I go to family planning. I know what it's going to feel and look like, the setting, but when I go to hospital I imagine something so much worse than I'm sure it will be. It will still just be a room. So what they told me last time was that my cervix would be anaesthetized and they will then go in, get the missing coil, the floating around coil, and replace it. So that's what's going to happen. That's how I'm feeling right now. I will check in once I've taken the park and ride bus to the hospital, had the thing, taken the park and ride bus back, and I'm back in my car. Don't let this fool you. It was bad, but I don't know why I'm crying so much. So okay, I think partly because I think it's just like a bit traumatic. I don't know. So I went in and we were talking about what I was going to have done, which was expected. And we didn't really she didn't really talk me through what the process was going to be. And I didn't mention what I thought it was going to be. And we kind of got in there. And it was really quite painful. If you've had a coil removed before, then, or even put in, it's kind of the thing of getting through the cervix is the most painful part. And it was just lots of that pain. And eventually I kind of was like, so I don't want to ask what you're doing because I think that's going to make it worse, but I kind of want to know what you're doing. And she was manually dilating the cervix, which makes sense. But the problem was there was no pain relief, which was fine. It's part of it was like I was expecting there to be pain relief, but there wasn't. There was no pain relief, but I'd taken some painkillers before, which is always a good idea if you're going to have any kind of pelvic exam. I got there 20 minutes early, sat down, like prepared myself. I'd got my painkillers that I was going to take, and I thought that's good, like 15-20 minutes and they'll kick in. But I checked myself in and then they just brought me in straight away. And so by the time I was like on the table, on the bed, nothing was working. So I just was particularly raw, I think. And it just took ages. It was like 20 minutes of opening up the cervix so that she could get in and get it out. And I'm pretty good in terms of like a pain threshold. I can at very least hold it together on the outside, and I like shouted out loud at one point because I just wasn't, it's like so, it feels so close and yeah, you're so detached from it. It was painful. It was. I'm gonna, you know, let's level with you. It was painful. However, part of what is worth mentioning is I've never had a vaginal delivery. So usually people who have C-sections, usually people who have the coil have had a baby before. And if your cervix has been dilated, then things are different, it would seem. But I've had 2 C-sections, so my cervix has never been fully dilated. So that's part of what caused the problem. It's part of why it was so painful, because it was like so shut. And it was more difficult and took longer than it usually would, she said. So that is worth mentioning. But also, I had another one put in. And so all the way through it, at any point I could have said, you know what, don't put another one in. I don't want to do this again. But for me, it's still worth it for the 5 years. 5 years of complete peace of mind, 5 years where I don't have periods. It was kind of like karma for me not having periods for so long. So yes, that process was not fun. But I still had another one put in. Now, once she put the other one in, I've basically had a constant dull period pain since then, which to me is totally foreign. This is another thing. If you have period pains all the time, if you're really bad period pains, then your kind of tolerance for that kind of thing will be better than mine from this point onwards, not the cervix thing, but the period pain thing. And so I'm going to continue this like video diary and share with you kind of all the symptoms and the side effects from now having the new one put in, because last time I had all kinds of weird side effects, and it was quite painful for a few days. But again, all throughout this like horrendous experience of having to have the last one removed, I still had another one in. So I do still think it's worthwhile. It was just really, really not pleasant. Oh, what a difference a day makes. So I am one day in, it was yesterday, and I'm feeling 1,000 times better. I've got a little bit of internal soreness yesterday. I had maybe like 4 or 5 hours of cramps, no cramps at all now. Which is incredible, because I really did think that I was going to have some pretty severe cramping for a few days. That's what's happened in the past. But I feel great. So that's day one. I will keep you posted.
So this was obviously forever ago. That was back in March time, because that last clip, I went into work. I was there it was the Monday that I had the coil refitted. So the tears, that was on a Monday. The Tuesday I went back into work, and half my office had been ripped out. I was in there, the doctor and the nurse that I saw, no one was super worried about the whole COVID thing at that point. I was in a hospital. It's just insane to think what happened. That day, I was sent home with all of my stuff, and I haven't been back to work since. So that's the reason that this has taken me so long to put together. I didn't really want to put this out there until it was feasible that you guys might actually be interested in either having a coil replaced or put in the first place, going for your smear, any of that stuff. I didn't think it was really relevant once we were in full lockdown, which happened later on that week. But also, there were no more clips because there were no more symptoms. The first time I had the coil, I had a very similar experience. It was very painful going in, but very quick. Wasn't such a major issue. It was like, I say quick by comparison, it was probably like 20 minutes. And then it was done. That evening I had some cramping and some bleeding, and then that was fine. The second time I had the craziest symptoms. I had a few days of being able, or rather not being able to sleep because of the cramping, and my boobs went up a full cup size, to the point where my friends who knew me actually questioned whether or not I'd had work done. It was insane. The strange physical symptoms or side effects, I wasn't expecting that at all. So this time I was like, right, could be anything. Real roll of the dice. And nothing. Literally that one day I had pain. It was a really, really bad day. It was very intense, emotionally traumatic, and really, in terms of the pain, the cervical pain, I did go through labour with my first child, but I didn't actually deliver vaginally. I ended up having an emergency C-section because I never dilated fully, which is obviously part of the problem. But it was akin to labour pains. That was like that pain, to the point of at the end of it, you feel like you should have something. You should have an actual extra human in the room at the end of the pain. I honestly cannot even imagine the actual pain of pushing a baby through your cervix, because just hats off to any of you who've done that without pain relief, because oh my God, just her manually dilating my cervix was insane pain. But that said, as I said in the last clip, I still had another one in. It's still 100% worth it to me. Even if I go through that again, I will still do it again. For me, it's great. I had no other symptoms, no other pain after that one day. And I actually had completely forgotten that the HPV test had come back positive until I came to edit this. And I'd completely forgotten I had to have annual smears. So again, that's clearly not changed my life in any way, shape or form. I just really wanted to put this out there for those of you who were considering this, who really wanted a very honest account. I know that I've mentioned recently not having periods because I was talking about like tracking my emotions, because I'll still have mood swings in the same way that you would if you did have periods. But I don't have any indicator as to, oh, this is why you feel a bit crazy right now. So I started tracking my mood with an app called Clue. And a couple of people said that they felt that they would want to have a period and that it was a sign of health. And it's one of the things that if you are ill, one of the first things they ask is like, are your periods regular? When was your last period? For me, I've had very few periods in my entire life. I've had the coil, I've had the depot injection, multiple different contraceptive methods that remove periods, just get rid of them completely. I love it. Not a fan of periods, not a fan of period pain, and if I can avoid them, I will. But I completely understand for some people, it's something that you want to have. It's a sign of health, that's totally fine. And also, it doesn't happen for everyone. Some people, if they've got very, very heavy periods, if you have the coil or the implant or the depot, it can help to lighten them, but they might not go away altogether. You might have a completely opposite effect. There's no guarantee when you have it put in. And even if you've had the coil put in before and it's eradicated your periods, you might have another one in and get periods. So again, that would really suck if that was my main reason. And we've talked about it, my husband and I, about whether or not he should have a, what's the word I'm looking for? The snip. What's the word? Vasectomy. But I think I still would want to have the thing that stops the periods. And so that is just me. That's how I feel. In terms of the smear, by comparison, walk in the park. I realise that for some people they have other mental blocks, they have other things going on. It's not just the physical pain, it's not just the embarrassment, I get it. But for those of you who are just like, I don't really want to go, just go. Ultimately, it's not harming anybody else if you don't go. It's only your physical health that you are looking after and going, but just go. If it is just that you're worried about the pain or you're just worried about it being embarrassing, then go. It's really not, it's very quick. And that was just like nothing compared to the remainder of what happened in this video. Anyway, I know it's been really, really long. A really long video, really rambly, and a very long time coming. But hopefully this is useful for even one of you. I wasn't anticipating all of the things going wrong that it did, but hey, content from my womb. And if anything else does occur, because I'm going to have to now have these annual smears, I will let you know. But yeah, hopefully it was useful. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you guys next time with something completely unrelated to this.